Thanks for listening to the Higher Ed Athletics Podcast with Travis Smith. Today, I'm joined by the Vice President and Athletic Director at Robert Morris University, Mr. Chris King. Chris, thanks for being on the podcast with me.
I appreciate it, Travis. Appreciate the opportunity.
Well, I've been following your institution for some time now. Your president was one of the first guests I actually had on the podcast, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But I kind of just want to jump into some of these questions that stick out. I always try to pull things from a school. It's always intentional of who I interview and what type of institution and athletic department I interview. And so for this one, I want to first talk about the institutional size. So Robert Morris is just north of 5,000 enrolled students last time I looked. So it's probably one of the smaller D1 institutions that have a football program. And I came from a D2 program. We talked about this, University of Indianapolis, similar size and type. And I absolutely love the sporting environment and the community aspect that you get, the atmosphere there with the athletic department. So what are maybe the benefits that come with that for your institution, but also would you say there are some challenges in resources or fan and alumni engagement too, with just simply less people who are either at Robert Morris or a smaller alumni base because it's just a smaller institution?
I mean, RMU, has a tagline. It's big enough to matter, small enough to care. It's kind of one of our go-to taglines. It's based on our institutional enrollment and the fact that RMU combines what we say is the best of a big research institution in a small college. And I really believe the benefits that come with a mid-major Division I private institution are that a majority of our students live in campus housing or live in off-campus housing that surrounds campus. And, we have more than 100 clubs and activities to choose from. We have 17 or 18 club sport programs on top of our 16 Division I athletics programs. And so students can really always find something to do. And I even go back, what I found appealing about RMU when I was an alum back in the 90s, as a student. I think the major benefit, RMU was really a teaching-centered institution where the faculty and professors, they knew their students by name, and the faculty student ratio was to me, it was lower, which allows you to get to really know your faculty. And I think RMU has always really been committed to creating a learning environment that leads to future success, whether it's internships, postgraduate job placement. I mean, I think, our student athletes, I know in particular, like the intimate classroom settings. And, when you look at from an athletics perspective, we just had, as an example, we had our official grand opening of the state-of-the-art UPMC Event Center last season. And, it's really kind of a focal point for our campus and our community pride and excitement. And the highlights last season, men's basketball, we had a home opener on ESPN to a sold-out crowd against Pitt. And we ended our season with another home sellout on ESPN, winning the conference tournament championship. And, I think it has significant competitive advantage with that type of environment at a mid-major program. It was really evident based off of, RMU volleyball and both basketball programs. We hosted conference postseason tournaments in our inaugural seasons. And so I really believe the environment, the community atmosphere of RMU really had a lot to do with our competitive successes. And the recent success for athletic programs, I think, has elevated the attendance, the engagement of our alumni and our donor base. And I still think we have a lot of work to do with our student engagement and our attendance. And I'd love to have every student on this campus attend our athletic events. And I think that's a big part of my job as the athletic director. It was one of the things that we had a really strong plan in place, I thought, with student life going into this year. Of course, the pandemic and COVID has put that on pause. But I do think that we do have a strong plan to engage the students, to engage the Student Government Association, really to engage those over 100 student clubs and organizations. I think that's been underutilized in regards to the marketing efforts and in the way we've done that. And we're really going to team up, I think, with Student Life this next academic year, post-pandemic. And I think we're going to come up with some really creative new student engagement ideas. And I know you talked about resources at RMU. I think mid-major private institutions are enrollment driven, where mid-major state institutions are student fee driven. At RMU, we don't have currently a student fee, so a lot rides in our enrollment numbers and on our athletics revenue generation. So in essence, the fundraising, the ticket sales, the corporate sales, the game guarantees, to name a few revenue lines. And so I've been at a number of major state institutions that a majority of the budget, a high percentage of it's been student fee driven. And now being at a mid-major private school, I pay a lot more attention to enrollment and missions than what I've done probably in the past. So, it's there's a lot of pros to being at a big state institution, and there's a lot of pros to being at, as you call it, a smaller mid-major athletic program.
Yeah, I wonder if the exposure of being on ESPN and with the Horizon League often on ESPN, with say you have fans allowed to attend games, is it kind of a double-edged sword that yes, you get that exposure, but maybe students are less likely to go into the venue if they know they can watch it on their mobile device? Is that something that athletic directors kind of worry about if you're relying on the ticket revenue? Or do you, I mean, you clearly have seen it where you've had on ESPN and sold out the event. I mean, what's that challenge like to be able to balance those two, to be able to get the in-person attendance and not lose them all because of the digital access?
Well, I think on the student side, we're not as worried about that because the students get in for free.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So it's just, how do we draw them? How do we, get them to come to the games, but I would say that the pandemic and COVID has concerned a lot of athletic directors, because again, I mean, we do rely heavily on ticket sales, which then feeds into concessions, which feeds into, merchandise sales, and it feeds into corporate sales, based on the attendance that comes to games. And, you go an entire year without going to athletic events or any type of events, concerts, events. Does the general public, they become apathetic and decide, it's easier just to, watch, the games from home for $5.99, $6.99 a month. I mean, that is concerning, without a doubt. But I will tell you that I do think anyone who has come to a live game, they get that excitement back right away. I've watched it. I think people are chomping the bit to get out of the house and get back out and be able to socialize with people. Again, I do think that, when you're an alum and a donor of an institution, or even the pro sports, I mean, here in Pittsburgh, whether it's the Steelers or Penguins or Pirates, I mean, they're pretty fanatic when it comes to the pro sports here in Pittsburgh. I think folks are really chomping at the bit to get back out. But yeah, I mean, there is definitely concern without a doubt, because I mean, again, we rely on that revenue awful heavily to self-support our program.
Well, I think it's awesome you have hockey, and you're in a city that obviously loves hockey, and so that was a draw for me when I saw that. I've never been working in an athletic department that had hockey, but I enjoy watching it, and so that's the type of event where I don't think you'd have a problem getting people to attend in person. Something about live hockey is just fun to watch, especially in that city, right?
It's unique. RMU. A number of years ago, they had dropped 8 sports. They were at 23. I'm sorry, they dropped 7 sports. They were at 23. And we have football and hockey, both men's and women's. We have men's and women's lacrosse. And so it's very unique. Most institutions that offer the sports that we offer are Big Ten or Ivy League schools. Mm-hmm. You just don't see many schools like RMU. There's 2 or 3 out there. I think Sacred Heart's one. The school up north, I can never say it correctly, Quinnipiac, or I never say the word correctly. There another comes to mind, but it's very few that offer the sports we offer. And so it's a lot of the larger number athletes, even rowing, right? We offer. And so it is unique comparative to maybe some other athletic programs. But yes, hockey, very passionate in Pittsburgh. We are hosting the NCAA Frozen Four this year. And unfortunately, we are hosting it in the year of the pandemic, which is unfortunate because it is a great opportunity to team up with Sports Pittsburgh, to team up with PPG Paints Arena and the Penguins. So yes, hockey, we are Pittsburgh's Division I college hockey team. We're very proud of that.
Well, I want to get into some of the branding initiatives. You talked about marketing already, but in September 2020, you all partnered with Old Hat for a comprehensive brand study for the athletic department. Why did you think it was important at that point to do a brand assessment? What did you learn from it, as well as what did that change with the brand? Because you mentioned earlier, you are an alum. You've been here, you've experienced it as a student, then you come in as the athletic director. Just curious how that maybe all unveiled itself.
Yeah, I mean, we partner with Old Hat Creative. And actually those talks we started that back in probably the spring of 2020. We just announced that in September. We did a lot of research leading up to the actual unveiling in September. And we really wanted to undergo what we considered a comprehensive brand study. Our overall goal was really developing a strategic direction for our athletic identity and our brand. And Their role was really to kind of help establish a clear and unified brand message that really would resonate with our student athletes, our campus, the student body, and really the community surrounding Moon Township and really into the Pittsburgh region. And we unveiled what we considered a refreshed brand identity and a creative strategy, including the launch of what we call the Unite campaign. We really wanted to unite the department behind our strong culture and a clear and consistent brand internally, really to elevate the perception of RMU athletics externally, both on this campus as well as in the Pittsburgh region. And, it was designed, the Unite campaign in particular, to engage our students, our fans, our donors, and the surrounding community by what we call providing maximum accessibility to a premium experience. Something we think that differentiates us than maybe some of our other counterparts in Division I athletics here in the Pittsburgh region. We recognize there really is an abundance of what we would call notable and prominent collegiate and professional options for the sports fan here in Pittsburgh market, from the pro side as well as the college side. But we do believe we are uniquely positioned to really differentiate our brand through that premium accessibility to our student athletes, our coaches, our athletic events, and through our president, Dr. Chris Howard, as well. And I do think that through that study, for those in the community that support RMU athletics, I think that it was a very positive outlook based on the survey we did on the athletics program. And there is a momentum that continues to build. Our fans, our donors, most of which who filled out the survey and that we talked to are RMU alumni, and they really have a desire to see all of our RMU athletics programs succeed. Of course, I think the one that comes to mind the most is men's basketball. That team has probably been the most prominent, successful team that we've had here for the Colonials. And, the feedback from that survey that we did identified really two main areas of improvement. Was increasing the student and campus support, which is something I identified earlier, and then attendance, and as well as enhancing our marketing, our advertising efforts. And we, through the Old Hat Creative rebrand, one of the things that we did was we actually developed an athletics game day app, and then we did a redesign of our official website, and both of those were launched in the fall. And then we're also going to use Old Hat this spring and summer, depending on the pandemic, to create a graphics and brand plan for all of our athletics facilities. So it was a pretty comprehensive brand study that we went through.
Yeah, and they've done a lot of work in the industry lately. I focus a lot on branding right now in my doctoral program and my research interests. And so I looked at yours, and then I know they did a project for Indiana State, and I used to work there. So that was a big deal of changing their complete brand assessment. Then they also did a really good job with University of Missouri, Kansas City to help rebrand as Kansas City Athletics. And so that's what I like, that I can actually see what they did for you. Basically, if you go to their website, they actually put out a lot of the published materials. And I think the consistency of your brand and the identity and the mix of colors and the logos didn't change too much, but it's just such a smooth brand. And it seems like maybe that's something that you all were going for with department wide, and instead of just sports specific.
Well, I think it's a delicate process. Again, I think that our fan base, our alumni, they identify with the RMU brand, and I think there were some small changes we made that we thought were more consistent with where we wanted to see our brand and what our identity was. And I do think that, again, and Old Hat Creative would indicate this, of all of the studies they've done, they felt it was remarkable at how positive the surveys were about RMU. Normally it's, and again, I've been through them, and I've been through UTRGV at Alabama, at Central Florida. I mean, you get a lot of negativity. Normally people fill out surveys. It's normally not to say something good. It's normally to say something negative, right? And it was relatively positive. And so you don't want to make a lot of changes just to make change, right? And so I think that, our message, Unite, was a strong one, particularly with everything that's going on today in our society. And I think it rejuvenated a little bit, I think, inside our department, amongst our athletes. It gave us a message as far as what our culture was and within our internal constituents with our coaches and athletes. And so it was well worth the effort. And they did a fantastic job, and we're really excited about it. And that's just the beginning. We have a lot of other plans that we've had to kind of put on pause. And so we're really excited. And again, we're able to utilize it in a lot of our different collateral materials as well, which we've done, annual reports, different things like that. So, it was a very good study.
Yeah, I was also talked about branding during the pandemic with Mike Hill, the athletic director at UNC Charlotte recently, and how they had to pretty much release their new brand design during the pandemic because they realized they already bought all their gear, and so they were gonna put it out, and people would see it without the release. And so I feel for everyone that went through a brand identity or change or awareness during the pandemic. But the good thing is, I think the Unite campaign, once people are allowed back in your arenas and your stadium, is that something that you could still build on because they'll be returning to the department. And so it'll be exciting times. I want to talk about another change that happened recently with RMU, and that's conference membership. So early in your tenure as VP of Athletics, the institution accepted an invite to the Horizon League in several sports, and then football joined the Big South. You also have teams competing in other conferences too, and you just made some new news about that with one of your teams. I know you oversaw joining the WAC while at UTRGV, so this isn't probably new territory for you, right? But what is RMU joining the Horizon League for most of your programs do to elevate those programs, in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, this past year, we featured an invitation to join the Horizon League as our primary conference for 10 of our sport programs, and we officially joined on July 1. And we did, as you said, we announced plans to join the Big South Conference as an associate football member, and then we also joined the Mid-American Conference as an associate women's lacrosse member. And then recently, in the past 2 weeks, we did announce men's lacrosse will become an affiliate member of the ASUN Conference. I think the Horizon League, was a really good move for our athletics program, and we've aligned ourselves with what we believe is a nationally recognized and well-branded conference that is going to, continue to provide that national exposure and really a commitment to athletics and academic excellence for RMU. We wanted to make a statement by elevating our sports programs and our commitment to our marquee sport, basketball, with the move to the Horizon League. And that was one of the things I think that as we were doing research, and basketball in the Horizon League is definitely going to benefit from an increased national exposure, in particular due to the presence on ESPN, and in particular some new geographic rivalries, including annual games against Youngstown State and Cleveland State, some things that we had maybe with St. Francis, but a lot of our NEC foes were on the East Coast, and we were the westernmost school, I guess you could say, in the NEC. And I think the other thing that was appealing was the main priority for the within the Horizon League strategic plan really was a commitment, a focus, and emphasis on men's basketball. And we share that same commitment to basketball, and in particular because of the new state of the art investment into the UPMC Event Center, and that really is going to help us, I think, elevate the profile of our basketball program. And Horizon League, their national ranking, the competitive success in men's basketball really is commensurate with where we're currently at, and where we've been with our competitive success and our aspirations. And for the long-term growth, we really felt the Horizon League really was the right move for our athletics program, our university. Our alumni and our community are very excited. Our fan base is very excited. Unfortunately, we announced in the middle of the pandemic. That's a time when you win the conference tournament, you're going to go and play in NCAA March Madness. The pandemic hits and you lose a lot of momentum, and then 2 months later, you announce that you're going to go into the Horizon League, and you lose. The pandemic spikes again. You lose that momentum, and so you got like two major opportunities to sell, and double your ticket sales. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. But there's again, we're excited to be members of the Horizon League.
Well, I think if I'm not mistaken, Butler was in the Horizon League when they made their runs to the tournament too, and so they had that national prestige there associated with Butler before they left. And so maybe that's a comparable institution, I would say, is Butler and Robert Morris, at least size and both being private. I'm not sure Butler, I don't know how much of a research institution they are, but those could be basketball success stories that kind of launch and elevate the rest of your programs too, right?
That's one of the main reasons you make the move. One of the main reasons we made the move that we did. As Coach Toole and I had a head coach meeting, head coach AD one-on-one meeting this morning, and we actually talked about that. there's a book coming out here soon on the Butler way. And it was two authors, one individual, like Graham, I can't think of his last name. He emailed me last night, actually. And so it's all about how they created the success they did for Butler basketball. And then also it created success for Butler University from an enrollment perspective, from a fundraising perspective. And I was talking to Coach Toole about the book, and I forwarded him some information and told him those some things we need to have some discussions with our own donors and administration on, and replicate some of that. And a lot of that's been done here already. And so, those are things that, again, that we aspire to be. And those are the directions we want to take the program.
I looked into the book recently. They actually emailed one of my faculty members of the class I'm in, and so he thought I might be of interest to it. So I've got to give me a copy of that book and probably hopefully have those individuals on the podcast at some point. But it does seem like the ideal blueprint that I think everyone's kind of known in athletics at that size institution that Butler's kind of, they did it 2 years in a row that they could be that blueprint, but now that someone wrote a book finally about it, kind of lining that out will be interesting. And, speaking about having those conversations about the university, you have a president that's no stranger to athletics, and President Howard. So he was one of my first guests on the podcast, and he didn't disappoint. Such an incredibly impressive background, different life experiences that probably no college president has a mix of. Military, flying helicopters, and being an outstanding running back, and just all these different areas of his life. I believe he is at Oxford too. And so with his understanding of college athletics and just his leadership style and gender, what's it like working for his administration since you've returned to Robert Morris?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, the director of athletics position at RMU, it really became attractive to me because of his leadership and vision for the university in athletics. He's got a really high standard of excellence for athletics. And that really was a deciding factor in me accepting this position. It's really kind of a special opportunity to work for and with a president of the university that has a strong vision for the future and for athletics. And I was actually fortunate to get to know him in his first 3 years as president at RMU. I was an advisory board member in the RMU sport management program for the previous 15 years. And I really came away impressed with him, with his background in athletics and higher ed, his vision for athletics. He really has a strong commitment and passion towards college athletics. And he's had a number of, roles within the NCAA and outside athletics, industry organizations. And, it's funny, you talked about some of his accolades, and, how many ADs in this country have a president with, his academic and athletic qualifications. He's got a bio, and when he's introduced, they have to read it, specifically, because, it's a proper way to do that. And I'm the only one that's allowed to deviate because I do it really cool because I talk about all the athletic achievements, but, you reference some of them. But how many presidents can you say? He's a graduate of the United States Air Force. He's an academic All-American as a running back at Air Force. He's a winner of the Campbell Trophy, as the nation's top football scholar athlete. He's got an MBA from the Harvard Business School. As you said, he's a Rhodes Scholar. He's got a doctorate in politics from Oxford. He's got a Bronze Star for service in Afghanistan. He served with the Elite Joint Special Operations Command. He's a member of the Knight Commission. He's a recent member of the College Football Playoff Selection Committee, a recent member of the NCAA Honors Committee. Let's see here. What else is there? There's a member of the COSIDA Academic All-American Hall of Fame. He's winner of the NCAA Silver Anniversary Award. I got this thing down pat pretty good.
I think he's on the American Council of Education board now.
He is, and that's recent. And he's got two more coming that'll be announced, sometime this spring, that are really significant committee. And I think what makes him special as a president is he's very passionate to serve the student body, not just the athletes, but the student body. He's out there all the time. Very charismatic, very personable. And, that's something I think, again, when you're behind a desk all day, whether you're an academic or you're an athletic director, you're not really serving the student body. You're just not. He puts his actions match his words, right? And he's got a intense pride for RMU and RMU athletics. He's not a graduate from here, but his pride is just as strong as any alum that I've met. He attends a majority of athletics events. His wife, Barbara, she sits beside me at every basketball game. She knows athletics. And so, I mean, they're the first couple of, RMU and athletics. And I'll be honest with you, he's really become a strong mentor and a friend. I have an enormous amount of respect and trust for him. And, when he hired me, he said, I'm going to be the president of the university and I expect you to be the president of athletics. And he very rarely ever overrules me on little to nothing. And I'll be honest with you, I mean, we probably talk 6, 8, 10 times a day, whether it's email, text message, phone calls. He gets excited about something, he'll pick up the phone, and then if he doesn't get me, he'll call me a minute later. And if I call him and it goes to his voicemail, I don't leave a message because he'll call me back within the hour. I mean, he's got a, we're going to build this together, team of teams mentality. And I will tell you, ADs and head coaches get probably too much credit. You're only as good as the support you receive from the top. And if any AD out there says that they do this alone without a great president, they're crazy. And I'm fortunate to have Chris Howard. I really am. And again, he's a big reason I'm here, and he's a big reason I stay. It's a great. Everyone always says we have this joke. They call it hey, it's Chris and Chris. And then, a lot of times, I will say, well, there's only one king, right? And then he always comes back and says, well, there's only one boss. There's not a lot of presidents where you can say to a donor, there's only one king, right? I mean, that's the kind of relationship we have. So
you got a president and a king. So
that's right. That's right.
Well, it's not surprising to hear that type of relationship just from getting to know him a little bit through conversations. But he really needs to try and accomplish more in his life, I think. But in seriousness, if you read that bio, people would assume he's this very old man, and he's still so young. So it'll just be incredible to see what else in higher education.
He just turned 52. I thought he was 49. He just had his birthday last week. And so I wish him happy birthday. I thought he was a year older than me, and he turned 52. So somewhere along the line, he aged 3 years. I don't know where it happened, but for some reason, I thought he was 49. I mean, but 49 or 52 to be where he's at in his career is just, truly amazing.
You could probably still lace him up and play running back too.
I will not stand beside him in photos because he's really fit. And then I'm kind of like chubby, and so it's obvious and how, it's just, he makes me look so bad in photos. So like he stands on one end, I stand on the other, and it's like a running joke now. So
that's funny. Well, so he might not be an alum, but you are, and we mentioned this a little bit so far, and I kind of want to shed some light on that. I'd have to do some research on how many ADs are actually sitting in the chair of their undergrad institution, but I'm guessing it's a rare occurrence given the timing of position openings and decisions to pack up the family and move the family. And do you want to actually lead a department that you had such a great experience being a student at? Maybe you want to keep them different. Can you speak to what it's like serving in that role at your undergraduate institution? And was it something you had hoped for once you actually got into athletic administration, and just hope maybe that the stars would align that it would work out at some point, or were you content with it not working out like that?
Yeah, I think looking back, closing in almost probably 30 years ago, transferring at the time Robert Morris College, now Robert Morris University, is probably the best professional decision of my life. And a lot of times you say personal decision, it really is the best professional decision of my life, because now I have the opportunity to return to the university that provided me my start in college athletics as an intern. And I would say, my plan for many years has been to return to Pittsburgh. It's where I grew up, served my alma mater, Robert Morris, as the director of athletics. I didn't know, if it was going to be later in my career. Sometimes athletic directors will, elevate, up the ladder, and then maybe they take that one last job somewhere where it's really special to them. I thought maybe that might, be the route for me with Robert Morris. But I kind of grew up here in Western PA, and my entire family is in the surrounding Pittsburgh areas. And Pittsburgh's a sports town. And I can tell you the King family was pretty excited when the opportunity arose. And again, if Chris Howard is not the president, that might have changed some things a little bit, even as an alum. Again, that played a pretty big factor in it. My mom, she actually had stage 3 cancer at the time. And when I took the job, she actually had stage 4 cancer. And I'd been gone for 25 years, and so it was an opportunity for me to spend time with her as she was going through cancer. And she ended up passing 3 months into me being here. And I got to spend, the last 3 months of her life with her after being gone for so long. And I grew up in a town of 1800, and it was very blue collar. We didn't have much money. And she's, worked 2 jobs to put my twin sister and I, put clothes on our backs. And, so there was a lot of things that lined up at the right time. And so I would say, and looking at the job at the time, it was probably more than just an athletic director position. It was kind of an opportunity to come home. To be honest with you, it's come home to a state that I really love, even though I've left, was gone for the previous 25 years and pursued my athletics career. You never really, leave the feelings that you have for this region of the country behind. I mean, I grew up in my hometown area. I'm still best friends with, the 8 guys I grew up with, and talk to them regularly. And so it was a very special opportunity to be able to come back home and have this opportunity to lead this institution.
Well, throughout my athletic career, so I've been working in college athletics full time now for, this will be my 10th year, I believe, and 9th year actually. And outside of being a grad assistant for a year and a half at a school in Florida, Nova Southeastern University, shout out to the Sharks. I've always spent my career at Indiana schools, and I'm from Indiana. I live the town over from where I grew up here west of Indianapolis. I commuted to Bloomington, but not everyone in our industry is like that. My twin brother, I'm a twin as well, for example. My twin brother works in video directing for college football, and he had been traveling different schools and NFL teams for almost that whole decade. And then all of a sudden this past year, when the pandemic hit, right before the pandemic hit, he actually works at IU with me now, and he's the video director for IU football. And so he got the chance to come home. So it's definitely a rarity for some people. That's one thing that I feel blessed about, that I've been able to stay working in what I want to do passionately about, but also in my locale. So I can imagine, and I'm a graduate of IU Bloomington as well. But I imagine it's just incredible. I can understand why it'd be such a great opportunity to come back and serve your community, and especially to be there with your mother. And I'm sorry to hear that passing right when you returned, but I'm sure that was an incredible opportunity to actually be there and be present.
No, it was. And I will say that the one thing I always took for granted was, I always said as an athletic director, you always want to hire the best candidate, whether it's head coach, senior administrator. And I never really thought it was that major of a deal to hire an alum. I mean, I knew it helps, right? I mean, it's popular usually with the fan base or the alums or the donor base, but until you actually, you're part of that, so like, I didn't probably have as much understanding until like I stood at the podium and there was a sense of pride, that an alum was coming back as the athletic director. And then the media here in Pittsburgh, you got the hometown kid, it was the kind of concept. And I knew some of the media because I grew up with a couple of them actually. So that kind of helped a little bit, but the publicity we got for that was a little unique. And I think it was the donor base was much more accepting, to me right off the bat, because I had been an alum, I had been here. And of course I was a little more well known to the faculty, being part of the sport management advisory board and the school of business board for a number of years. And so again, you have I had a new appreciation in the importance of, hiring alumni to come back to the institution, where they were athletes at or students.
Yeah, I haven't been too secret in the fact that I think it would be awesome to one day be the athletic director of my undergraduate institution. So we'll see if it ever lines up for me, but I've got a lot of work to do in my career to get to that point. And you had spent I think a decade as an athletic director, and then years before that working in compliance, right? So I want to kind of talk about that AD route, because there are plenty of paths to become an athletic director, and those, I think those paths are even growing now, that you can get there with different paths and depending on where you're at in your career. Now, I started in compliance. I still I do bylaw 14 for IU. I do all the continuing eligibility. It's housed in academics inside athletics, but I got my start in compliance and internal ops. And so seeing that you had a compliance background really stood out to me. And I'm kind of curious, are there a lot of skill sets that you earned as a compliance person that helped you think transfer your knowledge or your skills to other areas of athletic administration that maybe you still pull on today? because you have to be very articulate and attention to detail as a compliance person. And at the schools you were doing compliance, if you mess up, I mean, it's pretty much probably on ESPN. And so I think it also comes with a sense of pride, but also understanding responsibility. So with those things, and is there anything else that you think you still draw on from your compliance background?
Yeah, I mean, of course, I don't think there's anything you can do to prepare to go in and being the associate athletic director for compliance in 2002, which was the worst compliance probation handed down from the NCAA at the University of Alabama since the death penalty at SMU back in the 80s or whatever it was. Now, of course, there's other schools that have taken that title since 2002, but being a 29-year-old and jumping into that was, again, it was a lot of responsibility. But I think when you look at compliance, I think it's misinterpreted more than anything. And I think you see a lot more administrators moving up fairly quickly. I mean, I think the old adage was you had to hire someone who was a fundraiser. You had to hire someone who had external experience. I think when you're talking about being a CEO, an athletics director, and you're talking about dealing with budgets, at a level like an FCS program, 20 to 30 million. But when you're talking at a Pitt, a Penn State in Alabama, I mean, you're talking 100 million, 150 million, $200 million budgets. That's a CEO of a company. You really have to be able to, have multifaceted experiences, and looking at, the revenue side, of course, but then also the financial side, the legal side, and really managing a political environment and relationships, from external and internal. And I think one of the things the way I view compliance was I viewed myself as an athletics administrator and not a compliance officer. And I spoke it. I would verbalize that all the time. When someone say, "Oh, this is the associate for compliance." No, I'm the associate athletic director, I just oversee a number of different areas that, has this oversight title of compliance. Right. And to be honest with you, I was a good administrator. I was 29 years old and I had to learn how to be a leader. I had to learn how to manage people. And so a lot of your administrative duties is not a lot different in a lot of the associate athletic director roles, as an example. I mean, your everyday duties, your roles, your meetings, your appointments, your planning sessions, your supervisory responsibilities. Just learning how to become an administrator is a big part of it. I mean, I had at the time, Greg Sankey, who's the commissioner of the SEC, was the associate commissioner. He was good in compliance and regulatory and understood a lot of the NCAA parts. But we had a guy named Gil Grimes, who's now the associate commissioner of the Big Ten. He knew the NCAA rules inside and out. I mean, that really wasn't my forte. I wasn't like an expert I couldn't say NCAA bylaw 13.1.6.4 point B is on page 40, whatever. A lot of compliance people can do that, which is great. Those are law backgrounds. And I was more of the administrator, and more of the rules ed, right? But I think the thing that separates the good folks, good administrators, compliance, is those that have the ability to manage the political environment. And again, I think when you're at a big school like Alabama, you are a public figure, and ADs exist in a highly charged political environment, whether you're the AD at RMU or you're the AD at Alabama. You have to be able to develop and maintain positive relationships with a lot of people, both on campus and off campus when you're in compliance and when you're an athletic director. You got to deal with crisis management, and you better learn to be flexible and don't get stuck in your ways, because there's arrows coming at you every way in both compliance as well as being an athletic director. And that was one of the things that I always talked about was compliance, is not a lot different than being an athletic director, because you got to have a high political IQ. The most difficult part of the job in compliance, the most difficult part of the job in being an athletic director, is dealing with big time head coaches. I mean, there's not a lot of difference, in those roles. And so I've done a session a number of times for, a number of faculty at different colleges. And I wrote up a things called the Athletic Director Political Map. And you look at like campus governance, campus relationships, committee work, dealing with conference offices, access to department staff. And it's like a tree, of all the different relationships you have and all the politics that plays, within that tree. And so, you're going to have involvement with the board of trustees and regents, heavy involvement as athletic director. You're going to have some of that, in your role as compliance. You're going to deal with legal affairs and compliance. You do the same as the athletic director. You're going to have involvement with the president of the university if you're the top compliance person, no different than you do as the athletic director. So there are so many different facets of compliance that preps you to being an athletic director that other associate athletic directors may not have those opportunities until they actually sit in the seat as the athletic director. And so, I mean, just think about campus relations. I mean, you're in compliance, you deal with faculty senate. You, in most cases, may deal with the deans. You deal with the SGA. You deal with the athletics council. I mean, a lot of folks on the development side, they don't deal with those groups, and to have those relationships and know how to deal with those parts of campus, it's a big part of your job when you become an athletic director. So, again, I'm very happy I have a very good compliance officer who is a very strong associate athletics director, and she's a terrific athletics administrator. And it's not something I'd want to go back and do again, but I would never change the experience I had and the abilities that and the responsibilities I had and the areas and the schools that I worked at, because I wouldn't be as good of an athletic director today if I didn't have those experiences, hands down.
Yeah, I think that's great points that people will definitely listen to. And, it resonates with me a bit because of I had Kelly Kish was my mentor in compliance and got me my start at University of Indianapolis and at Nova Southeastern. And I had to tell people in my class why I decided to do the higher ed doctoral program at IU. And a lot of people were surprised that an athletics person knew a lot about higher ed organization and management. And I fundamentally learned that through compliance because of the conversations I had at a smaller institution where I actually would talk to the president and talk to these other areas when I was early in my compliance career. And you just learn finance. You learn so many things about higher education as well. So I think the political aspect that you mentioned is very true, and it's stuff I still pick up on a lot, and it's why I love to kind of geek out on compliance stuff still. But it does teaches you a lot, and so I think those are great ways to look at it. I kind of want to wrap up with a couple last things. And in your initial press conference when you were hired, you had mentioned it was a habit of yours to go to as many university events as possible as the AD in your career. And so I've heard people talk about this before, and I kind of just want to ask about it. What is that visibility or that lack of visibility of an athletic director at campus events do for not only you professionally, but what kind of reputation does that bring to the rest of athletics if they see you there or they don't ever see an AD there, in your opinion?
Well, Manning, as a campus leader, I've always worked hard to break the stereotypes of athletics and academics by establishing those positive relationships throughout the campus community. I think there's many ways to achieve that goal. Being part of non-athletic events or committees is really an important strategy for building or developing those meaningful relationships. It's always been important to me that our department works closely with our campus administration and the faculty, and specifically. And I think it's important to me that our athletic council and our faculty senate have confidence that we are fulfilling the mission of the university and we're playing our part in bringing positive recognition to the university. It's also important to me that the SGA, the Student Government Association, the student body has a voice and a seat at the table with our efforts and our initiatives. Because again, we're here really to serve the students and our athletes. And I do think being visible at athletic events, does provide opportunities for contacts with supporters of our program, taking the message to our support groups and other organizations really is a kind of key part of our strategy to spread our positive message of RMU athletics. I have numerous speaking engagements and appearances, throughout my career with sports specific groups, alumni groups, campus organizations, civic organizations, media groups, to name a few, but I have just as many that I go out and I speak, regularly at, on campus events. And I think it's important that we're seen. I also understand, the role of the athletic director really is expected to be actively participate in the life of campus and the greater community. I mean, Chris Howard, he named me a vice president for a reason. I'm a member of his president's cabinet. He wants, those on campus to realize that athletics, is the most visible marketing tool, front porch for this university, but also the vice president role, I take on additional responsibilities. And I do need to be involved in attending various campus and community events and, take every possible opportunity to interact with other university administration, faculty and staff, alumni and friends of the university. And, in settings outside of the athletics environment. And, I spend a lot of time with local, state, national leaders, really in an attempt. And I did a lot of this at UTRGV, even really to kind of place the university message out to those individuals that not only benefits athletics, but also puts the university in a position really to kind of to spread the educational, the mission of the department and the university. And, as we were becoming UTRGV, one of the things our president did there was our vice president for governmental relations and myself. We were spending a lot of time in other parts of the Rio Grande Valley, really talking strongly about this new university concept. And I was fairly popular as athletic director, and the VP for governmental relations was as well. And so we supported his mission, and his vision, for this new university. And so I think those are things that resonated very well, not just for athletics, but for the university overall. And I'll tell you one quick story. I remember Mal Moore, the athletic director at Alabama. I'll never forget this. I was his chief of staff my last 2.5 years there. And so he was at an event for one of the deans. I don't remember which school it was. And he called me up and said, "Hey, I need you to bring over 4 tickets to my box for the upcoming football game." And he was at a function, and it was over, I don't know, one of the schools. And I came over and sat at the lead table. It was a luncheon, and he had actually raffled off 4 seats for the whatever school it was to sit in his box that upcoming weekend. And he did a spur of the moment. And it was for a fundraiser for one of the schools. He was invited, and he just did a spur of the moment. And I asked him, I said, "Well, why would you do that? You don't even know who these 4 people are going to be." And he said, "I did it for what's right for the school. They're doing a major fundraiser, and I can always go sit out in the media room if I need to." And I thought that was incredible that he did that. I mean, this is like Alabama football. He gets no time to himself, right? He gets to sit in his box and actually watch an Alabama football game. He may invite a couple people up there that he's friends with, but the school, they made a major donation. The couple who purchased the 4 tickets made a major donation to the whatever school it was at Alabama. So, those are things that resonate with me. And when you do those kind of things, it makes a major difference on campus. And so those are things I think that play a big part in the success that you have in what you're trying to do, both athletics wise, but then also for your university.
I think that story is what's cool about that story is you remember it as a significant thing, and that your boss it was probably not something that they thought of that was incredibly over the top, because it was part of their leadership style of commitment to the institution. But that's obviously had a huge impact on you and turns into how you lead. And I go back to what you talked about, no, I'm the associate athletic director, not just the compliance person. You hold the vice president title. He hired you to also be the vice president, not just an athletics person. And so I think that's kind of what I look at it of when I see someone that's also vice president. You pretty much have that engagement requirement that to serve the rest of the institution on top of representing the athletic department. Does that seem accurate?
Yeah, and Chris, Dr. Howard, he holds me to that, and those are things that I think that are important. And he feels that position should be a vice president. He wants it to be seen in that role, and so those are the expectations that are placed upon it. And so that's part of the role and responsibility, and I relish that, and I'm not going to let him down. I know that. So.
Well, Chris King, thanks for being on the podcast. Really enjoyed it, and I know a lot of people are gonna learn a lot from it. I want to give you, if you have any final parting advice for either for me or someone listening to this that eventually has that goal of being an athletic department administrator or athletic director or higher ed administrator, just kind of what your advice would be for them while they're throughout that process.
I think the advice I usually give is just learn to listen. And I give that advice because I didn't do that. I was not great at that. I aspired to be in that next role rather than, 100% concentrating on the role that I had at the time. And, I think a lot of the young administrators, they have to be the football administrator. They got to be the men's basketball administrator. And if you are great at the role that you're in, it's going to be recognized. It'll be rewarded. and you'll have those opportunities. And there may be a time when there is someone that's in front of you that is just so spectacular, and they may never move on. And guess what? You may have to move on yourself. That's part of what this industry is. But there are so many incredible administrators, and they're willing to mentor, willing to shadow, and to do everything that's been done for them. Listen, learn from them. And it took me a long time to recognize that. And I started to really grow much faster when I got to Alabama and Mal Moore. He gave me that talk. He said, you got a lot of potential, a lot of talent, but until you start listening and learning, you got an incredible group of people here that want to see you succeed. So I took that to heart, and I moved up pretty quickly and became an AD at a young age. And if he wasn't willing to have that discussion with me, I may not have become an athletic director. And so I made put my foot in my mouth, and so again, that'd be the biggest thing I would say for young administrators out there is just learn to listen, and your opportunity will come when that time comes, because you just never know when that opportunity will arise.